Yeah, Pips has decided to put his tail in the video. Well, people don't realize how awkward you have to be to start being a YouTuber. Being a YouTuber is a very weird thing to do.
You gotta give up a lot of your life. If you had one to begin with. Or
not have much of one to begin with. Exactly. Thank you. And that's the key to success on YouTube. Be a social moron. That's how it worked for me.
I gotta upgrade to 2 monitors eventually, because I think that would make editing way better. So that's...
You're editing on 1 monitor, Jay?
Yeah, I am. It's ridiculous. Things get so clustered.
I'm just impressed because your editing is so good. How?
Alright, so I am here with the disheveled goblin, Daniel Greene, who's just published his debut novel, Breach of Peace, which we're going to be talking about. Daniel, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing really, really well. Juggling multiple jobs kind of situation, but that's the life you and I both have signed up for, so it is how it is. But I'm alive and kicking, and it's finally a beautiful day here in Richmond. It's 72, so I've been enjoying the sun, finally, for like the first time this year.
So, okay, first of all, I just want to say a huge congratulations for publishing your first work, becoming officially an author. How does it feel?
Yeah, I got to put it in my Twitter bio. I got to put in my Twitter bio an author, and it felt very nice.
That must have felt
and it does, and it's still just imposter syndrome cranked up to 11. But I'm told that will go away with time. I'm just trying to just shut that voice down the best I can.
Yeah, I know. I still deal with that with being a YouTuber, imposter syndrome. But hey, man, you did it. You published something, so you should feel proud.
Yeah, sure. And I'm putting out a video tomorrow about the self-publishing process and how much of a pain it is. I'm hoping before I die I can do the traditional and self-published route, and then I'll make a video comparing the two. But I have a sneaking suspicion, as difficult as self-publishing was, traditional might be a bit harder for me. Because I'm such a control freak, and I know I'll have to give up some control in traditional publishing. Yeah. So it's going to be one of those things where, like, this is probably harder, but I'll be able to deal with it better, like, personal preference.
So can you tell me a little bit about, like, your experience with self-publishing in particular? What was your experience with that? Is there things you were kind of, like, surprised about?
Yes. Previously, I said to this, self-publishing, the most surprising thing was how difficult it is to actually publish. Like, it is a really difficult process. But I also am really surprised by how much fun it is. It's genuinely a really good time to publish something. As long as you don't get too in your own head, you don't freak yourself out too much, there's just such an enjoyment in the creative process. Like, there's software I use, Vellum, which you kind of design the inner layout of your book, and I spent probably 5 to 6 hours one day just having a really good time exploring every different option on there and settling on, what font I wanted my book to be, and that's enjoyable. It's a lot of creative catharsis reached through that I didn't quite expect it to be so much on the actual publishing side. Obviously on the writing side, that's expected.
Yeah, I fiddled around with Vellum a little bit, and it seems like it's a super great resource for writers starting off, because basically it sets it up so you have like an EPUB version I think it does PDF versions and paperback and everything, and it kind of automatically like formats it all, right?
It does. It's incredible. It just takes, like, I had it in a Google Doc. That's where I had my book. Yeah. And then I took it from there and threw it in Vellum. And then it on its own, it basically made it a book. Like, it did the chapters and everything. And then I just had to choose what I want my headings and fonts and indentations and breaks to look like. Really impressive. Like, that would have been, honestly, probably days of work.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But Vellum's just like, here you go. It's just like, there, you got it. Deal with it. I wish there was a little bit more control, but there was a surprising amount with how much because there's always this trade-off, right? With, like, if something does a lot for you, there's usually not that much control on your end.
Yeah.
I wish it was a little more the other way, but it was still a really enjoyable balance.
Yeah, that's the thing. I work in book design, and I've done some book formatting, and I use InDesign, which is like the standard, I guess. But the thing is that it takes days to, like, get things right, to tweak every little thing. Like, I did the formatting for Peace and Turmoil by Elliot Brooks, and just doing all that interior formatting, it took so long, when I'm sure with Vellum it would have been a lot faster, but at least I got it looking the way I wanted it to.
Did you still enjoy that process? Like, did you enjoy going through, little bit by little bit?
I did, yeah. I think I kind of I get into like this zone where time just flies by and I forget to eat food and just forget to do anything and I'm just in the zone.
It sounds like back when I was coding, you just kind of get in this zone and you just forget that like reality exists outside of like the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think the human brain is like designed to get in this hyper focus, borderline meditative state. And that's what that feels like to me.
Yeah, I think exactly. Even with making YouTube videos, maybe you experience this too with editing. Like, to me, I just get in that zone when I'm editing, and I just feel like time just flies by.
It depends on the video. It depends on the video for sure. There's some times where it's like, yeah, it feels great, it's going by, and then there's other ones where you're spending like 4 hours on 5 seconds, and you can't get it right, and it's just like,
I know.
God.
So, was there anything that you like dreaded with the publishing? With getting your book published?
Thankfully, what I dreaded most was working with an artist to get the cover, because I don't like confrontation, and I knew there was going to be those things where it's like, hey, I need this change, that change, and I always feel really bad doing that. Fortunately, I spent the extra money and I got Felix Ortiz, and he was so good. What he showed me was just better than what I had in mind. So it's like, oh, that wasn't exactly, but no, that's better. Like, there was like several times where it was like, my idea was not as good, so let's just go with that. That's wonderful. So, and he was really great about taking my input when I did put it forward, and so that was something where it was like, I'm not very good at not having direct control, and that was something I couldn't control because it's someone else's creative interpretation.
Yeah.
And man, once he took the reins, I just immediately started trusting him, and it was a piece of cake. Yeah, hiring an artist is tricky in one sense, where there's this instinct to be like polite. You want to be like not super specific because you start feeling demanding, but in reality, that's not good for the artist. They want to know as specific as you want, so that way they can really take that in a direction. If you're vague, they just kind of meander and are like, I don't know what to do for this person. So for him, knowing that going in, I laid out an email. It's probably one of the longest emails I've written in my life. It was quite a big email of just everything I envisioned and thought. And I think because I was so thorough, we only had like 2 or 3 exchanges before he got me the first draft. And I think, that's something I encourage people to do forward. Don't waste an artist's time by making them drag information out of you. Give them too much, and then let them kind of run with it from there. I think that is something that works out better for everyone involved.
So how long did it take for him to get the finished like product to you for the cover?
From when I first contacted him to when I got the first draft back was roughly 2 months, and then within just a couple, I want to say less than 2 weeks from there, I got the final.
Oh, wow, that's pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, he was very quick, and that's because I think he's, once an artist has their tools and their method and all that down, and also with the technology available for artists now, they can, if they mess something up, it's just undo button rather than strip the canvas down and all that.
Yeah. Okay, so now that you have your first published work, do you feel like it's going to be easier from here now that you kind of know what to expect with publishing? And
yes, I'm cursing myself by saying this, I'm sure. But now that I have people I can contact, now that I can come reach out to you again for layout work, now that I know what that process is like, reaching out to Felix for another cover, or Michael Kramer K. Redding, like before there was this big hesitation, this trying to connect all the webs and dots, make it all work. It was really difficult. Now I feel like I have at least the semblance of a system in place, and also I understand the existing industry a lot better. I want to do a few more videos beyond the ones I just did today about different insights I have into self-publishing now. And dear God, my respect for self-publishing authors has gone up. And the one side of this I do not want to think about is how much more complex I already made my complex taxes. Because my taxes are already very complex, and now I have like 5 different distributors putting my book out there.
Oh,
they're all going to give me crap.
Oh, geez.
That's actually the part of publishing I'm dreading most.
That's the part.
Serious. So many 1099s.
Oh, yeah, I imagine. Yeah, it always does that thing where it just says that this recording has been stopped automatically. And I'm like, why?
That's actually another reason I went with the Sony. The Sony just go ahead and rolls through it. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think you just... What's happening?
I'm hearing applause.
I lost my audio. Give me a second here.
Technical difficulties.
Why are you doing this to me? Every time.
Bam. There.
No, I don't plan on cutting any of
All right,
this
cool.
out. This is all just going to be in. Not gonna cut any of it. Oh, is there another issue?
No, I'm just very confused. I think we should be fine. We're fine. We're fine,
Okay.
Jay. We're fine. Totally smooth transition.
All right, we're good. Yeah, so those of you that don't know, I kind of dabble with, I've done some book design and some formatting. So I contacted Daniel, and I'm like,
Do you need some of that book cover design? I'm your guy.
so I helped work with Daniel doing the layout for his cover. And we have a few prototype versions, which I think we can take a look at. Do you have the email I sent you with those? I sent you like
I got
a
'em
folder.
right here. I downloaded them.
This was like I think this was the first one that we went with. Yeah, for this one, I just kind of liked the waviness to it, how it kind of goes with like the mist and everything, but it just didn't quite suit Breach of Peace, I don't think.
It didn't have quite the right tone. I think it like does fit
Pips.
the mist exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, Pips has decided to put his tail in the video. But yeah, it just didn't have quite the right tone, but I did actually like the wavy pattern. I think we tried to make that work for a minute.
Yeah, we
and then
did.
we ended up kind of bailing on it.
Yeah. Then so moving on to the second one, I think I tried it with swashes. So you mentioned that it has kind of like a romance vibe to it. And it took me 10 seconds to realize that. And then I was like, oh, you're right. Man, it does kind of have like a romance adventure vibe to it. So that
And
definitely...
with everyone calling my book a horror book, I feel like it's definitely the wrong call.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was definitely more not the right tone.
So I feel like the third one's where we really kind of came close, and it was like, okay, this is where we were getting it. This kind of felt like almost right to me.
Yeah, I think that's actually the font. That is the font we ended up going with. When we were looking at the swashes, you sent me some examples of some fonts you like, and you sent Red Rising. The font I used for your cover, it's actually the exact same font from Red Rising.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
didn't
it
realize
is.
it's the exact same one.
Yeah, it's the same font. Yeah, when you sent me that, I'm like, oh, I think that would actually work pretty good with Breach of Peace. So I found the exact same font.
Brilliant. It works. And then we have the, I called this like 80s cop show cover.
Yes. Okay, this one I sent to Daniel just as a joke because I knew he told me before how he doesn't like that clunky, bright, like metallic letters. So I sent that one just as a joke.
This looks like we're about to bust an 80s cocaine like lab. Like,
It does,
This is
yeah.
what this looks like to
It's
me.
like some Miami Vice type of look.
I'm not gonna lie. When you first sent that to me, I was like, I don't know. This might have been a problem.
This
I
might have
was
been a
like-
mistake. I should have looked for someone else. Yeah, I couldn't tell if you thought I was joking or if I was serious at first, but
I didn't at first. I was really like, oh no, at first. This one, we had another, like, this one was close in another way. We had basically ended up combining this one with the Red Rising Moresque one, and that was the one we ended up with, essentially.
to me it doesn't stand out enough.
Yeah,
and
it blends with the background of the sky. And that's, I think I gave you a challenge with this cover, because it has a very diverse set of color to it. Like, it's very warm up top and cool down below, so it's hard to find something that would work with both.
Yeah, it does. And with book design too, you want to kind of draw the colors from the book cover, but at the same time, you don't want it to be blending in with the book cover. So like with your name down there, I added that kind of like slight greenish blue transition, which goes with the mist. But
Yeah,
it was just
it does.
trying to nail the title for sure. And then this sixth one here, I don't think I ever sent you this one. This one was just way too dark. I think the metal type on that one, but it did have that Red Rising font.
Yeah, the letters look evil. I like it.
It does look very evil.
Yeah, it looks like the letters are trying to tell me to leave somehow.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just kind of like a little behind the scenes look, I guess, at some of the prototype covers as we were trying to find the right feel for Breach of Peace. And
Now,
I think
you got to answer a question for me honestly. How many more prototype covers were there? You didn't send me every single one. How many more were made?
There is more. I'd say there's probably a handful more.
Any more cop show vibe ones?
You know, I did experiment a little bit. Just that wasn't actually the original one I was gonna send you. There was a different one I was gonna send you, but
I was really impressed when you said that. You told me it was a joke because I was like, oh, it's as a joke. You literally hit like everything I said not to do.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so it's in like the top of the list on Amazon for a bunch of different genres. I've seen it be up there for like grimdark fantasy, dark fantasy, military fantasy, horror. What would you say the genre is? And flintlock fantasy too, but
I'm surprised how aggressively people are telling me my book is horror. I would consider it way more in the vein of like Seven, the movie Seven, which I don't think of as horror. I think of as a dark thriller. Horror to me has the intent of scaring people. I don't find this book particularly scary. I definitely try to write. I tried my best to imitate certain writers I really like, and one of those writers is Stephen King. So I think I pulled from how he handles suspense, or at least I mimicked it the best I could, and then tried to make it my own. But I'm mildly frustrated when people calling it grimdark too, but I've also definitely throughout my career on BookTube given up on trying to understand how people interpret genres, because everyone has their own different set of rules for every genre. I mean, there are people who consider epic fantasy to be things I do not consider epic fantasy, so I'm not going to fight people on the subgenres of the subgenres of the subgenres. But today, every single category I see success in, I'm not going to say that it's not that. I'm not going to have it be removed from that list, so sure, call it whatever you want. That's fine. I think it was on one that really... military fantasy felt the strangest to me. Because it's not at all. You're following police. The military play a role, but you're not following them. It's not about them. The themes are not military, so that's the one I'm the most confused on. The rest I can kind of understand, but military, I didn't label it as that, so I don't know why that got thrown in there.
I think military fantasy, I usually kind of think of maybe like Glenn Cook or like the Warhammer books or something. I think I remember I messaged you one time and I'm like, is there steampunk in here? And you're like, no, there's no steampunk.
Well, and a lot of people just don't know that like industrial fantasy is a thing. Like you can have the age of industry be the setting, and so people are like, "Oh, this is steampunk," and I'm like, "No, it's not steam-based technology.
Yeah.
It's I would say it's a little bit beyond that." There's actually an inside look into future books. There's actually going to be the first like engine-powered ships, and looking into those are steam-powered. Like, the first engines were steam-powered, and so I'm going to have steam-powered stuff.
Oh, awesome.
And
we're getting some spoilers
then
here.
People are going to be saying, like, oh, so you do have steampunk. And I'm going to be like, I guess. Like, it's not how I think of it, but fine.
Then I kept thinking of, I don't know if you know the video game Dishonored.
Oh, yeah.
But for some reason, I just kept thinking of that type of atmosphere in your book. So then as I'm reading it, I'm building all these like steampunk ideas that aren't there. Then when I stop to think about it, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't steampunk.
They're not in steam-powered cars, or they're in carriages.
Yeah.
They're not steam-powered guns, it's gunpowder. But in people's defense, I mean, it's going to continue to be a thing that in this world, technology is not matching the rate of acceleration we see in our world, because as the world becomes more clear in subsequent novels, the God that has stepped in and is a part of this society is quite literally telling people, like, here's how you should do this. Like, there is a God directing the direction of technological advancement through universities and things like this, and so because of that, I'm having to sit down and go, okay, if I had this God's agenda, what would I be making people progress in first? And so they're having things like medicine progress really fast, things like that, but they're not exactly keeping up to date with some more, I'm trying not to get into spoilers here, with some more basics that I think some people will be surprised by, is the most I can say.
Okay. So what are some of like your main inspirations for the world that Breach of Peace takes place in as you were creating it?
I've always kind of tried to look at fantasy and see what's not being written in enough. And there's a lot of Victorian fantasy, there's a lot of medieval fantasy, there's a lot of, alternate history around this time. But I've never seen just a industry-based fantasy where the focus is on the industry, and things like the manufacturing of steel play a huge role. Where if you look at history in the real world, things like the manufacturing of steel and the invention of new methods to make steel much easier to produce, and literally, like in the matter of a couple just twists and turns to the manufacturing process of steel, just exploded how quickly it can be made. That was one of the biggest changes in history. I mean, that allowed cities to be built like they are now. And so I'm trying to take things like that and make them core elements driving the plot. And then I just, okay, how can I tie that into a murder? And so that's basically where the story for this series of novellas kind of springs off from.
I could see that there's some Stephen King like inspiration in there. I also felt like some Arthur Conan Doyle inspiration, which I love. I'm a big fan of Sherlock. So I was thinking that Chapman is kind of inspired from that. Am I correct with that?
Yes, and admittedly, Chapman's character is the hardest I had pinning down because I didn't want to just have like a flat out Sherlock ripoff because those have been done to death. He's not as smart as Sherlock. He's not as intelligent on many levels that Sherlock is, but he's very good at tearing apart a crime scene in his mind and figuring out what's going on there. But even in like one of the first scenes where you meet him, he's missed something someone else has caught. I mean, I wanted to put that in there just to establish that he's not some super inspector. He's still human. He's just the best they have available. And on top of that, people who are really highly intelligent in that way that I've met in my life, he's mildly inspired by a real friend of mine.
Oh, wow.
They tend to have some pretty other big areas of gapping knowledge. And so I started to amplify that in Chapman's social interactions. And it's not based in him being disabled in any way. He just has such a hard time focusing. He's so ADD. He's so unable to focus on things he considers boring, which is largely people, that he just misses stuff. And he doesn't pick up on how to properly engage with subordinates or even his peers. And so he gets very frustrated. And on top of that, he's just competitive and he's a dick.
Yeah.
So I just kind of blend that all together
to me, it
make
seems
the character
like,
of Chapman.
To me, it seems like he's kind of a character where he definitely comes off as an ass sometimes, but maybe that's just the way his brain's wired.
He's wired for brutal honesty. And so in most civilized conversations, being wired for brutal honesty makes you a dick.
Yeah.
I don't mean to make you have to bleep a bunch, but that's just true. If you walk up to someone and say, here's all the things wrong with you and what the problem is, and you just do that, most people are going to be not happy with what you just said to them.
Yeah. Yeah, Chapman, I think, is actually probably my favorite character out of the main three. Do you have a favorite character that you wrote?
Hlid. I really love Hlid. Who I finally have been able to say her name right.
I was going to ask you.
A long time.
I was going to ask you how I pronounce that. Do you have like a Dothraki like guttural sound to it?
It's inspired by conversations I actually had with a Middle Eastern friend of mine a little bit when I was growing up, and then I combined that with an inside joke between me and Murphy and a peer, which I will never release to the public. It's an inside joke with me and Murph. But the kind of combination of KH at the beginning is my in-world way to say something that a dear friend of mine in middle school taught me how to say, which is the proper like Hlid sound. So it's more of a rolling of the two together, at least how I remember the conversation going with him. And so I just kind of did that, and that's where her name came from. And the development of that character herself, I wanted to kind of rail against a lot of the stereotypical stuff you see with female characters. So I find some of the most awesome female characters I've ever read to be, middle-aged women who break the mold of what you expect. They're not relegated to being background, so Hlid is very physically active. She's probably the most in-shape character in the book. Part of that's because her husband hasn't been around, so she's been frustrated and working out extra hard. And so, there's a lot that I pulled from real women I've met and know, and fictional ones I like, to make an inspector who, in my opinion, is not you could sit down and have a drink with her, have a conversation, you'd be like, oh, she's a good person to get to know. But once you see her act on her beliefs and the propaganda that lives in her mind, the fact that she's willing to just murder people because she serves God and these people are against God, that's the real conflict I wanted there. Where you're like, in her head, which you're sitting in for 90% of the book, you're like, I like her. She's going about her job right. She's good. And then she'll do something where you go, oh, wow, never mind.
So, okay, I think this is a good time to talk about, like, authorial intent then, because I know you just made a video on that fairly recently. I do understand how some people get a little uncomfortable when they're reading from a perspective that they don't agree with, but I think it's kind of a ridiculous argument to think that the author agrees with everything they're writing about, right? Like, obviously, Joe Abercrombie, he's not in support of torture. Mark Lawrence, what is it?
Well, we haven't asked him that directly.
I guess not. That's true. So when it comes to breach of peace, you have like this Orwellian world with a religious fanatic cult that's basically leading the world, and the police have like way more authority than they should have. And obviously, my gut feeling is that you, of course, you support that, right?
I'm super pro 1984. I want that all day. No. So I want to, reiterate something I left in the pinned comment on that video, where it was a vast minority of the comments that thought, oh, because Daniel wrote this, he supports this.
I definitely think it's a minority.
It was a very small, but I wanted to use that as an excuse to talk about something I've wanted to talk about for a long time. And that's something I believe in, where any author should be able to write from any perspective and do it convincingly, because otherwise, you don't believe that character. And I understand writing from the position of overpowered cops right now is sensitive. And so that's why I don't blame anyone who goes, I don't want to read this right now. That's completely fair.
Yeah.
And I kind of also get it. There's certain things I don't want to read or talk about right now because I'm so tired of certain subjects. So I just want people to know that overpowered god cops are not something I agree in. I am pretty far left on the political spectrum. Some would say very. And it's just a fictional story, but especially in the second and third book, there's going to be a lot more real look from different perspectives at how the people view the police. Because one of the things I wanted to plant in the reader's mind in this book is that from the cops' perspective, they think they're great and that everyone supports them. But once we're going to have perspectives that are from people who are in the lower class, who are, more downtrodden upon in this world, it's not race-based or anything, it's more class-based, but it's very oppressive and difficult because there is a very deliberate elimination of culture happening in this empire. They're trying to... I pulled from what happened in, when the British Empire was at its height. They just pull every culture into their own and they treat it like it's this lesser culture. But if you want to be really elite, you adapt our culture because we're the important people. And so I'm kind of looking at that in history. And, it's a very evil thing. And there's still, unfortunately, ripples of that in our society where people view, the Western culture as the proper one and the rest as not as sophisticated or primitive. They use all kinds of offensive terms. So, this is a very history-based world that I'm trying to then jump off from and do wild stuff with. So I very much so understand how people can draw parallels to the real world because they're there.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I'm intentionally trying to say this is that beyond drawing inspiration, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something I think is a good conversation. I really enjoyed that video you made about that because for me with my own writing, I'm also writing a story where the characters are not exactly doing the right things. They're not on the right side. So that's kind of a fear I've had for when I publish my work, that people are going to think that, I agree with that. But I think definitely when I was reading Breach of Peace, I think it's pretty clear, especially the further along you read, that, there's kind of a conspiracy going on behind doors, and it's going to be revealed later on, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but again, I'm always scared to get into spoilers, but the big shift that I think I can say that's vague enough is we're starting in the evil camp in the first novella, and the plan is in the second to have this shift, and by the third book to be sitting on the other side. And I actually want to do world building through this where you get a full, very fleshed out view of the dynamics between the parties at play by going from Camp A, sitting in the middle, and then landing in Camp C. And I've always kind of wanted to see that in a fantasy book. Like, imagine Lord of the Rings if we started Fellowship in Mordor, and then by Return of the King, we were sitting in Rivendell, and we were in someone's perspective there. I always kind of interested in that concept of world building that way. So that was the inspiration for this wide shift that's happening.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. So do you have, the three novellas, do you have, them structured out and everything the way you want them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm almost done writing the second one. And so these three novellas are basically just me practicing for my big book that I'm working on. And you meet the main character of the actual full novel I'm working on as well in this book. No spoilers
in Breach
for
of
who
Peace?
it is. Yeah.
Oh, I was wondering about that.
Character.
Okay. I was wondering about that. That was actually going to be one of my questions, too. I was going to ask if we've already seen the character, but...
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
If you're willing to cut this out, I'm more than happy to tell you.
Okay, I'll cut this part out. Oh, man. Okay, that is badass. That's fantastic. That gets me really excited. I'm excited for that.
Thank you.
I'll cut that part completely out.
Just cut right back in on you saying that's badass. That's a great pitch. But yeah, that's the plan, and it's been 10 years in the development. I mean, I've been sitting on this for a long time.
One thing I really liked about Breach of Peace is that I felt like each of the characters, there's Samuel, Chapman, and Clid. I still can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I did my whole review, which should probably be up by the time this interview's up, and I was just calling her Clid. So. But yeah,
that's fine. It's what I've been calling her, so you're fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so those three characters in particular, I feel like they have a really good dynamic between them, and I feel like each of them feel really unique. One thing I think that you do really strong is building dialogue between the characters. So what do you think went into building these characters to be unique?
So one thing I resisted doing that I already had someone tell me I should have done, but I violently disagree with, is telling me it should have been a love triangle. Spoilers for the book. This is not a love triangle. These are three people who have worked together. Two of them are married,
Thank
and they
God.
very much so respect each other's relationships. I did add the slight layer where she's attracted to Chapman. She's attracted to him, but it's just that. Because I find that to be a very natural thing. Chapman's confident and handsome. He's socially weird, but he's good at what he does, and that's attractive. And Chapman is basically borderline asexual, I'd say. He's someone who just doesn't really, that part of him is not interested in that. I talked to real asexual people about that to more develop that idea. But he considers Lyd to be like basically his best friend. And so that's the dynamic I wanted. And then between Chapman and Samuel is just basically a lot of my own relationship with my brother.
Oh, really?
Just that competition, that getting under each other's skin, that wanting to push each other's buttons. And so some people have been reading into that as some kind of thing where, Chapman's in love with Lyd and he's taking out Samuel. No, it's not that. He just really doesn't like Samuel. He really does not like Samuel and loves to piss him off. I had to avoid the love triangle because I hate them. As someone who's a huge Wheel of Time fan, I still hate love triangles.
I'm glad you did avoid it because I felt like the relationship it's kind of refreshing to go into a relationship that's already kind of built, and they already seem like they have a close relationship. I also liked how you're writing from the perspective of somebody who's like a chain smoker and just they don't even know when they got a cigarette in their hand, but that must have been
that's a real thing. I've talked to smokers who will say one of the hardest things is if you can't have a pack on you because without realizing it, if you've been smoking for years, you just do it and you don't think about it. And I've struggled with mild addictions here and there, and I get that. And so it's a very real thing, and I play it for jokes, but I don't ever try to make it the joke is haha isn't addiction funny. The joke is more just. She's frustrated by this. It's a character-based thing. I never want to laugh at addiction, but it's definitely her being like, fucking stop. Stop lighting cigarettes.
Yeah. So did you have a favorite scene in Breach of Peace that you wrote?
The cellar is what I will say to you. That's the closest to me. That's one horror scene in the book, and I really got to walk through a lot of senses, some mild action, revulsion, things like that, and trying to make an atmosphere that I thought would actually come off the page as scary. And I hope I accomplished that. And it was very, very fun to do. That and then the final action climax is what I'll say.
Okay, yeah. So I mentioned in my review how I felt like the whole cellar and basically the intro I felt was really strong. I felt like that was kind of the strongest part of Breach of Peace. I think you built a really good atmosphere there. And without going into spoilers, I was curious if you had any influence from H.P. Lovecraft.
A little, purely in what I want the mental reaction of people to horror they don't understand to be. Because I feel like that was H.P. Lovecraft's strongest horror element, is how the human mind reacts to something it can't process, or it's not used to, that's foreign. That's what his whole appeal was. So that specifically I found to be a great springboard point to, if you see something that's genuinely terrifying, you don't really process it well. You almost try and match it to what's familiar, even though it's not. So your brain tries to assign things that aren't right or not there or not accurate. And that's something that's very easy, I think, to make a reader feel uncomfortable with.
Just real quick, I gotta click my camera again because it stopped again for some reason.
This is why editing is awesome.
Okay, so did you struggle at all with writer's block, or even just something that I always find difficult when writing is that I get all these different ideas of where I want the story to go, and it's difficult to narrow it down and to close off some of those branching paths and just figure out where you want it to go. Is that something you struggled with?
Actually, yes, a lot. That was something that really, writer's block, I don't feel like is often from a lack of ideas. I feel like it's from too many. It's from this could do that, or it could be that, or it could do that. And you get stuck with this branches of possibilities in front of you. It becomes very scary. So for me, the process I had to really eliminate that was as simple as writing down all the different ideas that came to me and coming back to them a day later, and I'd always cross off the one that became the least appealing. So the
Okay,
one that, like, in the next day, I was like, that limits this and this. It doesn't accomplish that, so let's get rid of it. And then 3 or 4 days into it, you usually have identified one that's like, actually, that's the one that every time I like the most. That's the one that every time I'm the happiest when I read it. And that's where I would then go. So it really,
Oh, that's a good technique,
my brain,
for sure.
Yeah, my brain is super ADD, so I have to force it to just, okay, here are the options, cut one out. And that's how I solve that problem.
Okay, I'm probably going to have to steal that technique when I'm writing.
It's a lifesaver, and I wish I could say I was like instructed by someone to do it, but it was just me so frustrated one day with writer's block that I just did it, and it worked, so steal that.
No pressure at all. Do you know when you would want your main series? Like, do you know the time frame on when you want the main series to kick off?
So I want the 3 novellas done by early next year.
Okay.
After that, I'll
that's
probably
pretty
need a full year in between. So it'll be a full year of writing, planning, and honestly cutting back on YouTube to get that done. It's going to be a lot. I'm hoping to shift, make enough money off these novellas that I can do that and it's not scary.
Yeah.
Because, shifting my focus when, my main income's from YouTube to this other thing that maybe I'm not making enough money from yet could be terrifying. Especially when I'm making money from these novellas because of YouTube. Like, I'm under no illusions about that. So it's going to be a time. I need time for that. Luckily, novellas I can crank out, not have to cut much back down on YouTube, and it builds my confidence as a writer, which is something that is probably the biggest factor that holds back most writers is lack of confidence. I mean, that's the biggest hurdle for 90% of people who want to be authors.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've been working on a book series for a while now, and actually after seeing you publish your novella, that's kind of inspired me to think that maybe I should just start, like, for some practice and do some novellas in that world or something, because I feel like I need practice before I publish a full novel.
It's the best decision I've made in my career. Just going for a novella, it's became so much more doable, so much more attainable, and getting it done. Now looking at the full novel, I'm going, I can do that. I need to get through these novellas first, and I want to really solidify the practice, but everyone now who's going to come to ask me about, a novel seems so hard, I'm just going to say start with a novella. It's so good, and it really also helps you test your audience and see okay, what do they respond to, what do they not. I mean, I've already learned so much from the reviews that people have put out because they've given me such good feedback on where I fell short and where I excelled, and both of those are very valuable to know.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing I was curious about, do you think once you have all 3 novellas, is there going to be like a bind-up edition of all 3 of them?
It depends on how successful a Kickstarter is.
Okay.
That's the plan for now. Is I'll try and get myself a Sanderson moment where I get a Kickstarter that's very successful.
Gonna have like a leather-bound print of it. Man,
I'd love
print.
to.
Get Felix Ortiz to do some more artwork that could be included inside. That would be amazing. So as far as other writing, so I've been following you for a few years, obviously. We've kind of known each other. And I remember a couple years ago you talked about a story that was like a story you were working on that was like naval exploration with horror elements to it. Is that something you kind of scrapped, or do you still plan on continuing that at some point?
That still is the main novel series. The main novel series will be on ships going out and exploring. I can't get too much into spoilers, but the logical step, if you are in an empire that's entire culture is based around its military and its might, and you run out of lands to conquer on the continent you're in, you need to go find more things to fight. You have no other option. So it's about them setting out into this world and just conquering more. And that's where it's going to be pushed to.
Okay, that is exciting. I am so excited for the main series for sure. So one final question. Well, actually, it's a 2-part question. So you have a demon cat named Pips, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will insert a picture of Pips over here. I have 2 cats. You don't see them in my videos that often, but my question is, do you think Pips could take on my 2 cats in combat? Now, for some context, my cats are kind of soft boys. They're a little lazy, but I have been training them in combat.
Okay. Pips is currently right now in a cardboard box napping right there. I would say they'd probably take Pips. So let me logic this out. I want to be thorough. Pips is athletic. He still does pull-ups on stuff. He climbs my sound padding. He goes up blankets. He works out a lot. But every time I play with him and we're like, I'm tickling him and stuff, he just flops on his back and just kind of does this. I think because I just don't think he has very good fighting instincts, because even when he hunts me, he just runs up behind me and then like slaps my leg and then just runs away. Like he doesn't know more than that. So if you've been training your cats, I'd say easy peasy. I mean, it'd be like fighting Snorlax. It's just not that hard. Yeah, I just want to be genuine with you, Jay. Yeah, the biggest thing I can tell people, though, if they are interested in self-publishing and all this, is it's one of those things where you just got to do baby steps every day. And like if you want to write, if you want to self-publish, just do one thing every day towards accomplishing it, and amazingly within like a month or two you'll realize you're like almost there, and then you get excited and then you'll breeze through the rest. Like that's actually what I found to be the case. It felt so overwhelming, and then once you have like half the checklist done, it's like, oh, okay, I got it. Especially once you finish the story and you get your art and you get your cover design, it's like, okay, there's a lot of little things in front of me, but they're all just little things, so I can do that.
Did you have like a specific schedule that you tried to stick to with writing your novella?
My brain is awful. That's one thing I want to get clear. So unfortunately, my schedule was as fast as possible, no matter how much sleep I lose, because that's how I have to operate. Yeah. And so once I had the first draft done, it just became a sprint where I was just like, get the edits, hire editors, hire artists, get this done, go. And so I would get a YouTube video done, and then I would just switch over to working on my book until I needed to go to sleep. For weeks. And then during this time, my dad was having surgeries, and like I was in the hospital waiting for him, just on my laptop, still doing stuff for my book. Oh my goodness. And like my friends were messaging me, were like, "Hey, you not wanting to hang out?" And I'd just be like, "COVID, go away," and I keep working on my book. So it really did boil down to just I'm obsessive and I'm a workaholic, and that worked out well for that.
I've read a lot of stories with writers where they sometimes throw themselves into these things to limit themselves so that they can completely focus on their writing. Like the author of Hunchback to Notre Dame, the publishing industry, his publisher, they wanted him to get a book out there in 6 months. And I guess to do that, he got his servant to lock up all of his clothes away so that he couldn't go outside. So he just wrapped himself up in this gigantic shawl and just wrote straight. And he got the book out 2 weeks early.
That is why authors must be insane.
Yeah.
Every great author is crazy. They all have that story where it's like, oh, you're nuts. Artists often thrive in turmoil, which is unfortunately true. I don't like it to the extreme that a lot of people take it to, but there is obvious truth to the idea of stress and odd conditions being inspirational in strange ways. Don't do that.
Was that Pips?
No, that was me telling your audience, Don't put yourself in that situation. Be normal.
Yeah, don't torture yourself.
Just a little. You can torture just a little. Enough to get the creative juices flowing, then stop. But yeah, that's it, man. That's the key to getting everything done, is just organization and baby steps. That's been so true for my whole life. Baby steps are how you accomplish goals.
I just finished reading the book Atomic Habits. I don't know if you read that. It's a nonfiction book.
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, he talks about how, people set these gigantic goals for themselves, and then they don't allow themselves to be happy until they reach those goals. But what you need to actually do, you need to focus on your systems on how to reach those goals. So you kind of have like these small little systems that are building up to those goals. And I think that's kind of the best way to look at things. As long as you're making those small baby steps, then at least you're like improving 1% every day.
Yeah. And I think it's so important as well. Like, people need to learn to shut down. Like, that sounds strange, but like, you can't work more if you are always stimulating yourself. And so there needs to be more mindfulness on like just cutting off screens, cutting off work. Don't think about work. Don't think about anything else. Just try and let your brain truly rest. And obviously, it's a bit of an impossibility to make your brain rest, because that's not how brains work. But if you really get in the habit of disconnecting from your office, from your phone, from your whatever's causing you to think about work, it gets a lot better. For me, it's just long walks. If you live in Richmond, there's a decent chance you'll just see me walking down a random street now, just doing my thing, because it's how I have to just totally pull away. Because unfortunately, my office is in my home. My every screen around me is showing notifications from YouTube, so it's kind of a impossibility here. So now I shoot myself out into the world. and that's how I survive.
Have you ever run into into any of your subscribers while you're out on a walk at all?
Not on a walk, but I have met subscribers in bookstores, and one coming out of a bagel shop. Every time I'm far too awkward, I don't know how to handle it, so it does not go smoothly. It's not great, but I promise you're welcome to approach me. It just might not be the smoothest interaction ever, because I just editing in YouTube is how I appear social.
I'm not as, charismatic as I am on camera. I'm really awkward in person. I think people aren't really going to realize that, but...
Well, people don't realize how awkward you have to be to start being a YouTuber. Being a YouTuber is a very weird thing to do.
You got to give up a lot of your life. If you had one to begin with. Or
not have much of one to begin with. Exactly. Thank you. And that's the key to success on YouTube. Be a social moron. That's how it worked for me. But no, and honestly, I've been so obsessed with my job for so long. Now I'm finally like reconnecting to other hobbies I had. It's like I'm emerging from this YouTube bubble and like becoming a well-rounded person again. Like I tried so hard for so long to make YouTube work, and I'm here and it's stable enough now that I'm like, oh yeah, I used to like playing basketball. It's like, do I remember how to dribble?
Getting all these flashbacks.
It's just like, oh man, I had a dog. Where'd it get? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
Sparky! No.
One thing I'm trying to fix recently is just, so there's a period of time where I had a lot of stuff going on with my life. I was taking care of my mom who was sick. And then, so I just didn't have the time to be uploading videos as often as I wanted to. And then I had all these people kind of telling me like, well, quality over quantity. But then I kept thinking about that. And I think that's a good statement to an extent. But it's also kind of damaging in a way, because I just kept focusing on, okay, I need to up my quality. I spent like hours trying to figure out how to edit more. Spent days trying to figure out how to edit better. But then I wasn't putting out videos and getting that natural practice that I would have gotten anyway. So now, just this year actually, I'm trying to kind of reverse that and be focusing on getting content out there.
I hate that saying, quality over quantity, especially with YouTube, because one, YouTube rewards rapid uploads. Two, yes, YouTube is great for quality content, but if you come across too quality on YouTube, it literally can hurt you, because part of the appeal of YouTube is that it's genuinely you in front of a camera, no, producers and writers and stuff. And so if you over edit, it can actually come across poorly. Not that you do, you're nowhere close to that. Your editing's amazing, you're fine. You're bright golden. But it's about, I think, I've had a mentality now where as soon as I'm happy with a video, I put it out. I'm just happy with it. It's good enough. Put it out. I make the point I want to make, and that's all I need. Perfectionism is going to prevent you from growing more on YouTube, because perfectionism, it works against the YouTube algorithms.
Exactly.
YouTube does not, that's why half the channels that have over 1 million subs, you watch it and you're like, how the hell do you have 1 million subs? It's just you in your basement on your phone talking about your workout routine. What the hell?
Exactly. I know. Okay, and that's something I've been trying to think about too. I'm getting to the point now where as soon as I know this video is good, like it's okay, I try to stop myself from over editing, because I made myself into like a major perfectionist. I'm already a perfectionist, but so now I just get to a point where I'm like, okay, it's good. I'm going to stop it there and just post the video. And I think that's probably one of the best decisions I've made.
Yeah. And as long as you're happy with it and your fans are still responding to it well, and you're making the point, because like the way you and I make videos, it's the words are there. You're making the point. It's just, our editing is just adding fluff around the point. And so I don't see it as really detracting from the quality as much. I see it as maybe not being quite as engaging.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
There's also the argument that over-edited, and I'm very afraid that I come across obnoxious, because I do a lot of cuts and stuff, and I'm afraid it can be like too zany. I've started adding a lot of explosions, because I just find explosions fun. And I've had some people be like, is Daniel just surrounded with C4? What's happening to him? But yeah, it's really hard to find the right balance between being happy with your video, wanting it to be a great video, but at the same time needing to put it out and put food on your table. Like, it's really all hard. Yeah.
Okay, well, Daniel, it was great having you on the channel and talking about Breach of Peace. I'm going to have links down in the description to where you can buy Breach of Peace. It's available on Amazon, and it's on Barnes & Noble as well, right?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, Kobo, other things.
It's available all over the place.
Depository. Everywhere.
Everywhere. Also, I have a review up by the time this interview is up, so I'll link that in the description as well. Thanks for joining me.
My book.
I
trash the book. That would be so funny.
That's why I wanted to interview you first, because I didn't want you to see my review. I completely trashed on it.
That would be so funny, and I would love it. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always wonderful to talk, Jay.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Goodbye.
It's so awesome that you got Felix Ortiz to do the artwork. To me, I just feel like you really captured the feeling of your book for sure.
My two favorite things about my book are not the book. It's Felix's
just
art
the cover.
and it's Michael Kramer's narration.
Oh yeah, Michael Kramer and Kate Redding too. When is that audiobook coming out? Is that available now or no?
It will be soon.
Okay.
I'm basically just waiting on the approval process, and then once that's done, I'll be able to have it set up for the release date for when the book comes out. They did a great job. Unfortunately, there's a couple changes I made after they did the recording, so there's gonna be a couple indiscrepancies between the audiobook and the physical book. I'm waiting to see how long until someone catches it.
Oh, hopefully it's just like something small enough that's not too big of a deal, but
Hopefully. It's kind of a whole mentioned character is removed now.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, so I'm just like, you know what? I don't think many people will notice because it's just like one or two lines, but
yeah,
that's the self-pub process. That's the self-pub way. Is you just go good enough.
So
and thank you again for all your work on the cover. You did such a good job on like the text for the cover. So thank you again for that. Like the page count stayed the same.
Oh,
so
good. I was worried that the spine was going to be like a little out of whack, and we'd have to go back and fix that.
Oh, no. It's perfect. It's perfect. Granted, their printing isn't perfect, so sometimes the spine's the slightest bit out of whack just because of the printing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You just kind of have to be okay with that. I mean,
Okay.
Ingram Spark does good quality stuff overall. I'm actually really thrilled with how it looks compared to especially what people were telling me, because people told me it would not look good. But I'm happy with it. And little stuff like that, it's not going to bug me.
Okay. So do you notice a little bit of like a variation between the copies that you do have, or do they all seem pretty similar?
There's slight variations. The biggest surprise is actually the physical book is slightly different sizes occasionally. Like sometimes it's like
weird.
a centimeter bigger or shorter. So if I have like 7 of them in a row, it kind of just is like a little mountain range, and I'm like, that's
weird.
Really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Oh, especially once you get the other novellas out there and when they're on your shelf, like.
Yeah, my Assassin's Apprentice editions have the exact same thing where they're like slightly different heights, and it drives me insane. And I'm just realizing that's going to be my novella trilogy, and I'm like, mother.
Oh man,
do not want that.
Is that
you have the same editions of Farseer? I see them.
Oh,
do they have the same problem where they're like, are they slightly different heights?
Is that the UK ones you're talking about? Because I have the US and the UK one. Okay, the UK ones. No, I think they're like all matching. I'm pretty sure.
I guess I just suck. What about the US ones?
Yeah, the US one, they all match too. They all match.
Damn it! I just am bad luck. God damn.
I just hate how with the Witcher books, like the first, I think it's The Last Wish or something, how they just have like the small paperback copy and it doesn't go with any of the other ones. I think you can see it right there. I have it just resting on top.
Yeah. I will never understand why publishers do that. Why they'll just like, and I think Sanderson's guilty of it with one of his series too, where they all look the same until the last one, which looked different. I forget which one it was, but I will just never forgive people that do that.
I know. It's such a first world problem, but it's frustrating.
But it's a first world problem, but it's one that there's no logical reason for it. So I feel like you're valid in being upset because it's like, this is just dumb.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and then there's have you read Sufficiently Advanced Magic?
No, I have not. I've heard about it. That's the one with like the magic tower, right? That they go into?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. The spine from the first to the second is just entirely different. Like, it's just completely different. And I'm like, why? You're self-published. You did that. Like, I want to email the author and be like, dude, the Like, why in the world? I don't get that at all.
Yeah, because with self-pub, you kind of got the more control over the cover and everything, so. Yeah.
Right. Traditionally published, I can't like ask somebody because I can't like track down the guy who made the call. But now with the author, I can be like, so why do you hate me? The best thing I can tell you though, the A6400 is great, but
Yeah.
you need to get the lens I got. I'll send you a
Okay.
link to it. It's like the greatest lens ever. It gives you that wonderful like blurred background.
Yeah,
stuff.
I
It's
noticed
just-
in your
the
videos,
best
it's
lens.
like it's perfect. With my lens I have right now, it's got like a 1.8 aperture or something, so it does give that nice blur. But I have to have it like across the room, like way far away from me, and it just I can't even see myself in the view lenser, so because it's so far away. I have bad vision anyway, but so
Well, my camera is actually like usually within arm's reach. Like that's the lens.
Oh,
It's just
really?
like it blurs so aggressively. Like I can reach out and touch my camera a lot of the time. It doesn't
Yeah.
look like that because it does like that distortion, but it's great. And then the lighting, I had a photographer friend of mine come in and set up my lighting for me. I was just like, you know this better, do it. And so all my lighting is just done by him.
okay, you got like a backdrop on your shelves, right? Do you not have that anymore? No, I think you do. Like the
Backdrop on my shelves.
or like the color lights on your shelves. You had that for a while.
Oh yeah, there's just like these $20 sticky LED lights on Amazon.
Yeah, I have that
They're
behind
super
my
nice.
TV upstairs. So I was thinking of getting that for my shelves. Yeah, there you go. That's nice.
I think it's great. 100% tell you recommend, worth the investment. The
Yeah.
is your TV one the one that like changes color with the TV?
I can. It has a little remote, and I could set it to change. I don't think it changes with the TV. I think I have to manually
Okay.
set it to change, but it sets the
Gotcha,
mood.
because there's those really there's those really fancy ones that will like change the color with what's happening on the screen and stuff.
Oh, I didn't
don't
know
know if
that.
I'm into
That's
that, but I've
crazy.
seen there's some that do that. Apparently it's like more immersive. I just feel like it would give me a seizure. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if it would be good
Yeah, I
for
think it would
me.
kind of distract me.
It's like there's so many gimmicks with TV. Like they tried the higher frame rate, they try 3D, they try curved TVs. None of it really works. Like I don't think anyone really wants that stuff.
Yeah, I don't think so. I never got the curved TVs at all. I was thinking of getting this monitor that was curved, but I don't know. I got to upgrade to 2 monitors eventually because I think that would make editing way better. So that's
You're editing on one monitor,
Yeah,
Jay?
I am. It's ridiculous. Things get so clustered.
I'm just impressed because your editing is so good. How?